we are starting the February 12th, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. Grant, we're starting the meeting.
Alan was holding me up, sorry.
He always does.
Well, right into the bus.
All right, let's start with minutes. We have the minutes of February 3rd. Let's do those, and then last Monday's minutes, and then we'll get down to business. Has everyone had a chance to look at the February 3rd minutes? Does anyone have any changes to the February 3rd minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the February 3rd minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the February 3rd minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, unanimous. And let's look at Monday, the 10th. Does anyone have any corrections, revisions, additions to the minutes of February 10th? Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Oh, there I am. Okay, I'll make sure they spell my name right.
Is there a second? Second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Let's do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15. Yes. Any negatives? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. So that's 15-0-2. All right. I have an email from Norm McLeod. He just wants to clarify. This is on the ACMi discussion we had on Monday. He wants to clarify. I think he said this. He wants to clarify that all of the positions he hopes to hire are full-time except for 2. One is the development person. I don't know if that's a good idea to be part-time, but one is the development person and one is the production. So I just want to pass that on to everyone. And that's that. Rebecca sent answers to questions on the DEI budget. Did everyone have a chance to look at those? And does anyone have any follow-up questions for either Rebecca or Annie? Nothing? Okay, well, thank you for doing that, Rebecca. All right, with that, let's go right into budget. And Rebecca and Annie, did you have any further one?
Yeah. I'd like to start with libraries. And Tara, if you want to show that slide, if you're there, slide.
Yes, the FinCon off budget?
Yes.
Yes, okay, one sec.
Yep. Okay, if you want to go to library by the numbers to start, hopefully y'all can see this. If not, this is in there's a budget folder for library on SharePoint. If you can take a look at, this is basically information. This is 2020 budget year 20. This is FY 2025 numbers, I believe. And so that's kind of, circulation, program attendance, so on and so forth. If you want to go to the next slide, Sarah. Okay, so this slide is showing you where the library gets their money. So 80% of their budget is from the general fund. But 20% of their budget is from these other sources. And that includes Friends of the Robbins Library, some state aid that comes to them directly, the Fox and Robin Shop, which is this resale shop that they've been running for years. The trust funds, so this is investment results. And then the Arlington Libraries Foundation. Is everybody able to look at this enough that I can go to the next slide? You know, does that all make sense?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, all right, next slide is, you can go to the next slide. So these are the off-budget expenses. So in other words, when you look at that 20%, this is where that 20% is going. And there is also a document in the folder, the library budget folder. Quick. Yeah, so there's there's a document in there called Notes on the Off-Budget Expenses that gives you a verbal of what those expenses are. Oh, I don't think that's gonna do us any good, Tara. I'd say go back to the slide really quick, yeah. But, so this supplements the materials budget, it pays for staff development, it pays part of our Minuteman Library Network fees, that's part of the digital fees that they're using this to pay, and then they use it for some projects. This would have been the source of income for the $75,000 that was going to pay for the feasibility study required by the grant program last year. Okay, making sense to everybody so far? All right. So then I think we could just switch to the budget. Sarah? Get to the line.
Like the actual budget, town manager budget?
Yeah, or, you know, if everybody's got it, we don't need to actually bring it up. I just gotta get
Okay.
my stuff so I can go through and tell you what's going on with it.
Page 136.
Okay. No, it's- I'm gonna- Okay. So, let me get to my questions. So there's a question about the clothing allowance. This is the change in chart of accounts. Again, it's clothing allowance, cleaning allowance, it's all contractual, and it is just about chart of accounts. It's not about whether or not that's actually what the money is spent on, it's a stipend. Okay. And then contracted services of the Minuteman Library Network. So what I'm looking at here is the expenses to start. There was a question about contracted services. The contracted services is our Minuteman Library Network membership fee. And the assessed formula is actually about 80K. So some of that money is coming out of the additional support, not the, you know, the general fund. And there's a digital content fee. So the total dollar amount that's going in fees to the Minuteman Library Network is actually about $155,000. There's a piece of that that is digital content fee, some of which is coming out of state aid and some of which is coming out of the other sources of income they have, or trust funds, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you look at the budget.
May I add something?
Yes, you may.
Some of the digital materials fees is also under library materials.
Yes.
The library materials is physical materials, it's also digital things like downloadable books.
Yes. I knew I was forgetting. Yeah, so anyways, that's how all of the from the material budget is. It's okay. Yeah, and she has a note here about that, so, the digital content fee is split between, it's $45,000 from library materials and about $30,000 from state aid. Okay. We're expecting $122,000 in state aid this year. And giving away some of that money to pay for the new reference desk. And, they're pretty much allowed to use those funds pretty much every way they want to. Last year they paid for a facilities needs consultants to help with assessing the box. So that's state aid. The R&M building and grounds, that is repair and maintenance of building and grounds. And facilities pays for lunch and craft services at Robbins, but they use this line to pay for all repairs, building projects, et cetera, outside of contractual obligations. And most of these funds are spent on building issues, repairs to the library's front door, carpet cleaning, window cleaning, service on the library's boiler, landscape cleanup. Whereas facilities covers janitors, pest inspections, elevator inspections, and the other routine items. Yes, they are still microfilming, not very many things, but they're microfilming, still microfilming the Advocate, or what is the successor newspaper to the Advocate. And film does include DVDs and a small Blu-ray collection, and recordings are audiobooks, and they're circulating at a higher level than music, and the CD collection is kind of going by the by. And then library materials covers everything else that circulates. In that folder, the library folder, you will also see a document that is a list of the licenses and fees that they're paying. Most of this is little bits of technology that's used to support public use of computers and various databases they need access to for reference librarian and all that kind of stuff. Our RFID pads and user tools for printing. Anyways, the detail is there. Unclassified expenses is sort of normally used for some non-technical items. They're going to roll that into office supplies because it really is just office supplies. Telecom line is internet and phone. Technology supplies are things like cables. Printing is now handled through a revolving fund that is both money coming in and money going out to allow the public to come in and print things at the library. Cleaning and sanitation is actual cleaning supplies. There was a question about the vacancies. They have 3 retirements and a full-time staff member left because of medical issues, and a part-time staff member left for a job out of the area. And currently, they're interviewing for the Fox Branch Children's Librarian and hope to post the other full-time children's librarian soon. And they had an assistant head of circulation who retired, and they're hoping to advertise that position in a few weeks. And then there's a vacant library assistant, and they're currently looking for a replacement. And one Fox librarian moved to do a comparable job at Robbins, and that left the vacancy at Fox. And then they have one library assistant position. We'll see that it's gone down to 0 if you're looking at the salary detail. And they eliminated that position, and they're converting a 14-hour children's librarian position to a full-time 35-hour position, and converting a vacant 35-hour library assistant position to an assistant supervisor for the circulation department that will then better support their circulation. Anna claims that she made these changes based on some conversation she had with me at Town Day, so I'll take credit for that, but I don't remember the conversation. Okay. The offsets are the Little Fox Shop And there is also in the library folder a memo about earnings from the Little Fox Shop. They have not started opening on Thursday mornings yet because of the vacancies, but I believe Anna is discussing this with Karen Malloy shortly. And then also in the library folder, there is a, in these notes that I'm reading from, there is a link to where they got with the Fox Rebuild Design Grant, which is that they did not get the grant. And the basic explanation is that it's a pretty competitive grant and they prioritize lower income communities. So the small library communities that actually got the grant were East Springfield and Freetown, those small communities that just don't have a lot of resources. And so Anna wasn't surprised that we did not get the grant, but she feels like she learned a lot of things from that, and there'll be another grant round in 2028. The Library Foundation is planning on running a capital campaign with a goal of raising $5 million. So hopefully that will happen. Okay, and I already told you about the licenses. In anticipation, network security at the Minuteman. The Minuteman's, the library network, the MLN network, and all of the equipment related to it, the workstations, the circulation desks, so on and so forth, are totally separate from the town's IT because they're provided by the Minuteman Library Network. The library has 2 IT staff that support that system, access to that system, any problems anybody runs into, et cetera. All of the library staff underwent the same training as the rest of the town staff with regard to cybersecurity and are all converting to multi-factor authentication. There are 3 staff members who are on the town's network. The 2 networks do not touch. All the libraries, all the money they're spending goes through the town network, through the comptroller. No money is spent on the MLN side. And there is coordination between the 2 teams. So I felt pretty confident that they have network security handled, particularly because they are all undergoing the same training that town employees on the town network are undergoing. So the same, how to notice when you're being fished, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and there is one more thing I'd like to show everybody, which is at the end of the document, the library review document. There's a chart that is the 8-year budget. Or did I? No, I added a slide to the slide deck, actually. That's it. That's it, yeah. So there is a thing known as the municipal appropriation requirement, and that is that we are required to appropriate a minimum amount of money based on our historical support for the library in order to qualify to have membership in the Minuteman Library Network. And this slide shows you on the 2026 line, our minimum municipal appropriation requirement for 2026, which is slightly less than what we are appropriating. I think I'm ready for questions.
Do you have a motion?
I do have a motion. Move back to the budget. Yes, so I move approval of the library's taxation total of $2,969,882.
There's a second. All right, questions? Paul and Carolyn.
Just a few electrons. What did they say about usage in the last year? Has the usage continued to go up?
That's what those numbers on the first slide are all about.
Oh, okay.
And yes, we have a very actively used library.
The MIR doesn't include these funding sources outside?
No, it's totally the dollar amount from the general fund.
And the state aid goes directly to the library.
Yes.
It doesn't go to the general fund. Are there any other departments that get state aid in that way?
There must be.
The schools maybe, but
Schools for sure.
Yeah.
No, actually, schools don't. The school state aid goes into the general fund.
Lunch money, I think there's some offsets.
Lunch money's federal.
On the
isn't it?
schools, so the schools get, both. That's the answer. They get federal money that comes through the state and goes to them. So their federal grants aren't actually direct from the Fed, they're through the state.
Which,
So both,
but then they don't go through the general fund.
they do not go into the general fund.
Thank you.
Carolyn,
Okay, so, move on? Okay. So the assistant head of circulation is on the reclass for this
Mhm.
year. And one of my questions for her is, why do we need this position? And so I assume you two may have had that conversation already as well.
well, I think what she was telling us is that they've moved some other positions around, that in fact, they haven't added a position, as it were. They've eliminated some positions, retitled them. And that between the couple of things that they've eliminated, right, they've been able to rejigger positions to better serve the folks that they are serving, which basically is boosting children's library. The last 2 years, when we talked to Anna, both of those years, she had asked for an additional children's librarian. And she got turned down. And from a brief conversation that I had with Jim Feeney at the end of the FinCom season last year, when I said, hey, what about this children's library? And he said, that is not on the docket for next year. If I get the ability to add a position, I need it elsewhere. So I think the conversation I had with Anna was, I don't think you're getting your children's librarian, but if you get new vacancies, think about rejiggering your chart of accounts. Because that may be a good way to get people where you need them. And I think that's what she did.
Which is probably why the new pay for FY '25 is $65,360. It's probably an old salary.
Yeah.
And the new salary is $67,617, because that's what they need to hire someone.
Right.
Okay, those are my questions, and it gives me another question for HR, and I'll look back. And I meet with her tomorrow morning.
Okay. Charlie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to apologize for the phone going rogue on me. I was trying to find the calculator. I'd like to start off by saying that I think the library is absolutely fantastic. I mean, I think we get services here from this library system that are probably as good as anywhere in the country. I have 4 questions. First of all, when they're trying to fill the vacancies, do we have competitive salaries? You know?
You know, I didn't ask her that question, but she also didn't say that she's having trouble hiring. It didn't sound like the vacancies were people going to better jobs. There were some retirement and so on and so forth. So I guess that would be my answer. I'd go back and ask her.
Well, no, I would assume if they didn't complain, that it's probably.
They didn't complain.
May I add something? Which is when we talked about having, instead of having 2 somewhat related part-time positions, having 1 35-hour position, she did think that that would make the job more appealing. Yeah. So she thought we'd have more traction with applicants with having, 1 full-time.
Secondly, we lost that grant. Didn't the town put some money up for that? Did we lose it? I can't remember
No,
the
we
deal
did
there.
not lose that money. We didn't have to spend that money if we didn't get the grant.
Did state imply or state anything about the general condition of the capital assets at the library? I don't realize that there's a capital budget committee, but I don't know if there were any comments that, the roof's leaking or the stairs are crumbling or something like that.
No, I mean, I think You know, everybody agrees that the Fox is not in great shape, but there was no mention of there being any major capital issues at the Robins, which has had, you know, renovation within living memory, which seems to me like means it's probably in pretty good shape.
That was 30 years ago,
Living memory.
maybe 40 years ago.
No, it's not 40 years ago. Trust me, I wasn't living here, and I remember it.
So then, the other question, with respect to the Fox, you mentioned there that somebody's talking about a $5 billion capital
was-
campaign. So my question is, since we passed the MBTA communities law,
Mhm.
that building is sort of in the corridor, I think,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
So who's in charge of that planning? And is anybody thinking about combining it with some new developer so that we get a better library at a lower cost?
So there's been various conversations, vague conversations over time about how it would be a great place to put housing above the library. The library has a relatively small footprint. And whenever we have this conversation, it becomes really clear that if we're gonna do that, it would be a public-private partnership. The conversation's gone no further than that. But I would think that if there was a housing developer who wanted to make that deal and also contribute to the renovation of the Fox, we would take it.
But who is in charge of leading it, is what I'm asking.
I don't know, Charlie, because I don't think you could count on a head of libraries to do that.
That's
I
right.
think it would need some help from the town manager or possibly the planning department to lead that charge. So I think perhaps it's a thing we have to talk to the select board and the town manager about.
Thank you.
And something, when we had talked to her about this, when we were originally talking about trying to get the grant for the design, and we said, well, are you gonna do just a library or a library plus housing? She said, what you need is the money for the design. And then once, if we had gotten this grant and we had the matching funds, then what you would do is you'd start a process of, holding focus groups, finding out what people in town want, talking to the town manager, all those things. But that process would only start, because it's kind of involved, to think about, is there any interest in this? But that process would only start if we in fact had the money to do the design. That determines what kind of design you're gonna do.
I think we have enough indirect staff in the planning department and the management department that somebody should be leading this. I mean, back in the day, when we did the main library, with Peggy Bengler was the champion, you know? It needs somebody in the town to be a champion, and then the money will come, private and public.
And I think we need to find a champion, Charlie. Want to team up?
I'm too old.
I was gonna say I'm too old, so, yeah. We'll figure
Anything
it
else,
out.
Charlie?
I'm finished, thank you.
Chuck?
Okay, is it me? Did you say me? Thank you, Madam Chair. So, question, a couple explanations on what you said. We have 2 IT people on staff at the library.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes,
So the library has their own set of IT infrastructure that they maintain, including a website. I saw a license for a website.
because they are part of the Minuteman Library Network. The bulk of their IT infrastructure is all equipment and connections provided by the Minuteman Library
So the
Network.
server listed, the website.
I believe so.
Okay, okay, we'll ask the CIO tomorrow.
Yes,
And-
because I asked specifically whether or not the teams were coordinating. So we should ask Patricia whether she feels like they're coordinating.
And they also take credit cards. I saw they have a license for credit card software.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're,
Michael?
Absent the big building plans,
Mhm.
is there any plan to address the accessibility issues at the Fox site? Now, I know that was a component of some people's, about support for looking at, developing the property bigger and higher, that along with that would come some redresses of accessibility issues. In the meantime, is there anything working on that?
I did not ask Anna whether or not she was gonna put any request into the capital planning process for the library, did we? No request has been made. for
Michael, that may be a question for the Disability Commission.
Okay. And the other one that I had was, the shop, the resale shop is called Fox and Robin.
Yeah.
It was the Little Fox.
Yes,
Does the new entity have a lease or an operating document or something that clarifies their status, that explains that they are the proprietors of this business, so they can stay in business and continue to provide the offsets that they do?
I did not ask that question.
Can you follow up there?
Yeah.
Grant, are you finished, Michael?
Hold on.
Grant,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was hoping somebody else would ask this question instead of me. The Minuteman, a big fan of the library too, always, and the Minuteman network is one of the things that really makes it go. It's probably one of the best deals in the next to clean water, of course. But yeah, what's the first of all, what's the annual cost? And I can't be, you had it, it's in contracted services, or is it dues
Yes,
and memberships or licenses?
No, the dollar amount in the contracted services line is all Minuteman Library Network. And then there is $45,000 in the materials line that is Minuteman Library Network, and there's $30,000 of the not general fund money, the state aid or whatever, that covers an additional portion of the digital services.
But that's not in the expenses.
It's not in the expenses.
So the total cost of per year is the combination of contracted services of 45,000. Okay, and
Yes.
so has that gone, I'm trying to see, so it's solely that, so it's actually gone down? No, the budget amount's the same, but the actual's gone up a little. I was just wondering, that's a
Yeah.
great deal, but how much does it increase per year?
Well, year over year, the last 2 years, it hasn't,
Great, better deal.
so.
Any, which is fantastic, but is there any plan on anything? I mean, that's amazing. The size of the budget and really the biggest engine is the Minuteman network and such a small portion of it, but no increase, no nothing. It's gonna stay the same.
She did not say that. I would assume that if there was gonna be an increase, we would see it in next year's budget request, and then, you know, they'd have to adjust other things. I believe it's been pretty stable.
Yeah, gone up 10% or something. So, but it's not budgeted to go up.
No, it's not budgeted to go up.
Okay. Alrighty, thank you.
Welcome.
Topher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for the breakdown of the other funding sources. So are Friends of the Robins and the Arlington Libraries Foundations, is that just two different 503C or whatever they are, two different nonprofits that?
It's two different entities. I don't know if Friends is a 501c3. I think the foundation must be, but I don't know about Friends.
But they're just two, okay.
They're two fundraising.
Two fundraising,
mechanisms.
but they just happen to be, there just happens to be two of them.
Yep.
I wasn't sure if there was something.
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, they're not the same organization.
No, that's what I mean.
I gotta assume they talk to each other.
Yeah, right, it's just weird.
Yeah.
Having been solicited and donated to both of them, I was starting to wonder. I too agree that the network is a huge force multiplier.
Yeah.
That's it.
Dean?
So, something you said, sort of piqued a thought that I have, and I don't know if it's a worthwhile thought, but I figured I'd ask you what you thought, which is, you know, and it dealt with when you're talking about like any type of like computer systems and infrastructure and all that, which is, I don't know if we've ever, for these organizations like Minuteman that we're part of, I don't know if we've ever taken a look recently at our membership agreements to understand what our liability is, if something were to go wrong in places. Right, so like, for example, if something went horribly wrong at Minuteman, we know what we're on the hook for, what our share of on the hook for wrong is.
Yeah.
But if something went wrong with the Minuteman Library Network, we don't know what our cost is, or if we have a cost. And we could have a member agreement that says, all members owe their pro rata share of the problem. Is that a fair question?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. I've never thought to ask the question as part of a budget review, but maybe we should send an email around to the town manager and Anna and see if we have a membership agreement that we could get a copy of.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, I think we might think about that with all of our organizations. And one thing that popped in my head, like on the school side, is I assume we have a liability for the lab collaborative. I mean, considering we're one of 5 members, right? If something were to go wrong there, I'm assuming they're gonna come back to us for the cost. If they can't fund it through their own budget.
Or possibly part of our cost is insurance,
That too.
like liability insurance. I mean, they're transporting kids, they gotta have some kind of.
But can you follow up?
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Yeah. Altosky, did you have a question?
No.
Any other questions on the library budget? None? All right, we have a motion, it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you. Do you have any other budgets?
I think I can do the rink. So, Karen, we might start with that consolidated view of the rink salaries.
What page is it? 179, thank you.
Yeah, I gotta get this in. Okay. So, the spreadsheet that you're looking at there is my attempt to give you a single view of all the positions in rec and rink because they are shared. Thank you for the request. Just to get credit where credit is due. So between the 2 functions, recreation and the Edwards Arena, there are 12 positions. And that includes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 of the 6 positions that are partly at the rink are shared with recreation. And there is only 1 full-time position at the rink, which is the rink facility supervisor. And then the administrative positions are shared, administrative assistant and payroll. And the off-hours supervisor is shared, and the assistant facilities coordinator is shared. And then the rink pays 20% of the director of recreation's salary. And so this gives you a consolidated view. This spreadsheet is in the rec and rink folder, if anybody wants to check my math. And then just for my own sake, I did a thing with the recreation budget where I chunked it into a bunch of line items to try to compare year over year because there were so many changes. There have been so many changes over time in terms of recreation programming. So you can choose to look at that or choose to ignore it. It was really just, I wanted to be sure that I understood how money had shifted between contracted services, programs, salaries, so on and so forth.
And that's the bottom.
That's the bottom. Yeah, I didn't find it revelatory, so. Okay, let me get to the record note questions. And we'll start with the rate. Oh, retained earnings. Everybody ready to write? Although this is in the recreation, Lincoln Recreation Questions document in the folder. The recreation's retained earnings balance is $1,022,000. And the rink's retained earnings is $104,000. And there's a note here from, Natasha. She says, retained earnings are not utilized until and unless they are needed at the end of the year. In years where they are part of the planned revenues, such as FY '24 and '25, they will be spent. Unless collections outpace projections, then the retained earnings usage would be spent down by the difference in the extra collection and the overall expenditures in the enterprise. So in other words, they don't use them even for the things they've budgeted unless they need them. Does that make sense? So think of these retained earnings as an operating reserve for the rink and an operating reserve for recreation. The $450,000 requested in FY '25 was intended to be used for various uncertainties associated with moving into the Parmenter. So this was about moving into the Parmenter, making renovations to the Parmenter to be able to run a childcare program out of the Parmenter. And that included, classroom furnishings and equipment, unknown costs to cover for building and utilities, upgrades to heating system, bathrooms, and office space. This year's retained earnings that you see budgeted, the $279,000, is going to be spent on some changes they have to make because they have requirements for running a child care center that are, okay, tell me what the acronym here, EEC?
EEC, early
Education, child care, early education and child care regulations require a certain level of security and some separation, being able to separate classrooms. And so they have to do some renovations that include, currently the main entrance has no greeter. There's nobody to stop you once you get in the building. There's no security check on, are you the right person? And you're buzzed in with an in. So they need to add an office at the entrance that is now a preschool bathroom. That means they gotta build a preschool bathroom and a separate staff bathroom and office somewhere else. And then they need to subdivide a large classroom into 2 spaces so they can have 2 classes worth of kids. Otherwise, they have only a restricted amount of kids in this very large space. And then they're doing some soundproofing. So they have some other options for using spaces in the evenings. And then they need more security to separate the Rex preschool from the other private preschool in the building. So all of that is EEC required. And then there was a note that everybody thought might be important for everybody to know, just in case you can follow in the news. There is no current plan to charge private daycare orgs for their use of the playgrounds. They would like the private preschools to provide them with information about when they are using the playground so they can get some coordination amongst the programs, so you don't have 50 kids showing up at a playground that maybe only has enough swings for 20. But they are not planning on charging for any permits. They're just trying to get some coordination going. There are 2 new group positions in the rec department. The new assistant director of recreation and the preschool assistant director. The new assistant director of recreation is going to be focused on capital aspects and projects. You have to remember that the recreation department is now responsible for the reservation and all the infrastructure of the reservation, or the reservoir and all the infrastructure of the reservoir, the Ed Burns Arena and all of its infrastructure, and now the portion of the Parmenter School that they're using, and the expanded childcare programs. So Natasha felt like she needed some additional help with what are the managerial responsibilities. And that person will also be handling field requests and have some increased responsibilities at the Parmenter. And so that's what that position is And then they're adding a preschool assistant director, and this position will report to the preschool director and assist with staff development and management and develop age-appropriate curriculum and plan and conduct daily activities and so on and so forth associated with early education care regulations, and maintain accurate health records for the staff and the kids, and assist with review and evaluation of part-time, seasonal, and volunteer workers. And she included a job description. I think there's job descriptions for both of these positions that are in the rec and rank folder. And Tara, if you could put up the kid care org chart. I just want to be sure everybody understands how this works. So there's a recreation director and an office admin and a program director, and then there's a kid care preschool director, assistant director, and then 4 to 6 classroom teachers. And then there's a kid care after school co-directors and 6 to 8 group leaders and 6 to 8 assistant leaders. So in terms of the staff that appear in the budget as salaried staff, it may look management heavy, but there's a big chunk of the budget that is contracted salaries for all of these teachers in all these other positions. I'm in good budget, see if I can clarify that. Yeah, so if you look at kid care preschool and kid care after school, you'll see there's 150,000 in the preschool and 230 in the after school. That's all those positions that don't show in the tally line. That I assume are 1099 positions. I didn't specifically ask. Okay, let me go back to the questions. Childcare revenue, the change in the childcare revenue is a result of the increased enrollment and a slight rise in the tuition rates. The tuition rates are still on the lower end and in line with Fidelity House and Boys and Girls Club. So this is essentially a service to the community because they're not trying to maximize profit. The change in the Reservoir Beach salaries is due to an increase of staff needs for extended beach hours and additional program offerings and additional staff needs around the res concerts. I think now that we're doing more adult activities in the evenings at the res, they need more staff time, and that's what that is all about. You'll see if you look at the budget that there was last year a large chunk of money on the line detail that has gone to zero. That money has shifted into more programming budgets, and I believe that part of that is money shifting to the beach reservoir salaries because a certain chunk of that detail number was to provide staff coverage and a police detail for the beer garden and so on and so forth at the rest. So R&M contracted services just as repair and maintenance, and it used to be split between $20,000 in equipment building and $20,000 in mechanical maintenance, but it's just been combined in the $140,000 chunk at this point. I think again, chart of accounts change. The increase in the debt principal payment is due to some FY26 capital requests for a field master plan and a playground master plan, and those studies are costing a certain amount of money, and I think it's split between capital and the recs budget, and so that's that $65,000. Credit card fees. Natasha needed to talk to Julie about this. I think this is me not phrasing the question quite exactly. They use an application called MyRec for the signing up to take classes and so on and so forth, and credit card fees run through that application. And I said to her, hey, are you using the same credit card app, by which I meant the same servicer as everybody else in town? I believe all use of credit cards in town goes through the same credit card servicer. Does that make sense? Like, regardless of what application is in the front end, it's Stripe or somebody on the back end for everybody. Because these days, if you get an application where you're gonna take donations, you can choose your servicer, it can be MasterCard or Visa card or Stripe or whatever. And I think the town consolidated everybody in the same service. I could be wrong about that. That is something I know was a project 10 years ago, to get everybody using the same credit card service and get all the departments taking credit
I think there's a couple.
card.
Depends on how far back you.
Yeah.
Which has the treasure. No.
Yeah.
You can have all these different credit card companies, but the underlying transaction processor is probably the same company.
I think there's a couple. Invoice file and all.
No, but I mean, I think the town maybe you can choose one. I don't know, did you?
I can cover it.
Okay.
I think what you're looking for is the payment process.
Yeah, the payment processor, that's what I'm
So you
saying.
could lose all these different applications, but if
But
like
it's
Chase
the
Payment Tech
payment-
is on the backside or Fiserv or whatever, all the process on the back, that's the question.
So are we using more than one payment processor, and if so, why? Because also part of that is they all charge different fees, and if we minimize the fees. Anyways, that's an IT question. Something else you can say about that. But the number $70,000 still seems high to me, so we're waiting for an answer on something there. Because it's fees, it's not the money flowing through the system, it's like it seems. I guess if they got a couple $1 million budget, $70,000 for credit fees is not that big a deal, but it just seems high. We asked about electricity and natural gas. They're comfortable with those numbers, even though the electricity number dropped. Natasha says their electricity costs go down in a cold winter because they have to keep the building less cold. And then it's hard to see, but there was actually a overarching decrease in auto allowance between the two funds, the recreation and the rink, because of the change in director. So Natasha's allowance is lower. The health insurance increase is due to new staff. Debt service at the rink is paying off previous projects. And the separate line that is maturing downtown debt interest, this might be debt the town took on that they're paying interest on or interest and principal on. But she thinks that's from a previous rink project that included renovations and installing of the ADA lifts for the bleachers. She briefly touched on the ownership arrangement with BCR, where they're supposed to be giving them 2% of sales, but they're responsible for all the repairs. And they have a 5-year renewable lease, and I think there's some effort being made to renew stuff. They got paid, get it down, and paying the building. Repair and maintenance contracted services on the rink is Zamboni maintenance. And the change in the paint sharpening fees is just lowering the use. So, any other questions? Well, you want me to make a motion first? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna start with Ed Burns. So I am gonna, it's easy to do from here. So I wanna move approval of an expense budget for the Ed Burns Arena of $679,000 and $679,456 and a total revenue of $679,456.
There's a second.
Second.
Question.
Would you like both motions?
We'll just do one at a time, but I feel like we'll just go ahead with the second motion because we're not seeing any hands raised, so we'll do a second motion.
Sure.
Oh, all right. John, Carolyn, and John.
So, and you probably already said this, Annie, but so how much is the town paying, in addition to their revenues? How much is coming from, is it zero? That's what I thought it was.
Zero.
Okay, confirming that. Thank you.
Yeah, when you see transfer from other funds
Yeah,
in these budgets, that would be from the town,
Yeah.
and at the moment it's zero.
that's what I noticed, thank you.
Carolyn?
Thank you. The treasurer assistant, right now, it's, for the rec is listed as an OA5, and they're getting a $4.7 thousand increase this year through reclassification from an OA5 to an ATP4. Did she talk about that? I assume.
No, I didn't ask. Could you repeat what position that
So
was?
you wouldn't know about this because it's in reclass, and so you never know until I start mentioning it. But the treasurer's assistant, which is probably
Treasurer's assistant?
the administrative assistant accounts payable, probably
Yes.
that person. It could be the payroll person.
Okay.
It's one or the other. Because they're both at, OFFA 5. One or both of them are, at least one of them
Yeah,
is getting it, one FTE is getting a raise of $4.7 thousand. And they're jumping to an ATP4. Did they talk at all about the increased work of the treasurers or the treasurers? or
No.
Accountants?
did not come up.
Okay, I'll ask, I'm gonna meet with her tomorrow, I'll ask about that, but I like to ask. what
Yeah,
you
I mean,
heard
what
as
you're
well.
asking is what's the justification, right, of the reclass and all that, that's the budget numbers.
That's okay, it's not the big.
Charlie?
So, thank you, Madam Chair. On the ring, they're using $50,000 for retained earnings. I think you said they had 104,000.
Yeah.
They used 50,000 last year. So does that mean in a year they're gonna be out of money and, is there an imbalance here between, revenues and expenses that's gonna catch up?
Did we ask them when we were gonna spend retained earnings on?
I'm looking up how it's changed over.
Yeah, I don't know, probably, because I don't know what the retained earnings found from a year ago.
Well, they used 50,000, so it must have been 150,000.
Well, it could have been lower, and because that's the budgeted number, but you see the actuals for 2024,
That's true.
so they don't use it just because it's in the budget.
Yeah,
It really is a bug number in a, think of it as an operating reserve.
Okay, thank you.
And frankly, they can't use retained earnings if they don't have them. They would have to make
Well,
a budget
yeah,
adjustment,
then you go to transfer from other funds, that's what I was.
or make a budget adjustment. And that's where we come in, I think.
That was the direction of the question.
I think there's an unlimited revenue upside for ice time, Charlie.
Other questions? Dean?
Not much a question, just an observation, maybe somewhere where our subcommittee can be helpful to our new rec director, is, just because I see it, I think I know she's experiencing some level of unintended revenue loss because the high school gym went offline, right? So just on a short version, right, the high school gym goes on offline, and so they push the high school pushes their programming to the other schools. So you go up to Audison, you'll see this beautiful basketball court, right? They can't use it for games for various reasons. But they've got the high school teams practicing at Audison, which meant the programming they were doing there and renting out is gone, right? Things like that. And she can't control that. We know that's part of the
Right.
project. They weren't gonna fix the high school gym because the new
Right.
one's opening in 9 days,
Right.
right? So she'll have some dip in revenue, which is fresh in her mind now.
Mhm.
But in a year and a half, when it hits the actual, or 2 years when it hits the actual column, she won't remember it, and then we'll have questions on it. So this is probably what, like a new rec director moment to say to her, you might want to chart all your variances that are caused by your problems. So when a year from now, people are asking you about them, you're not trying to scratch your brain and figure out like, oh yeah, we lost the Audison for the entire winter, we lost this, we did this, we pivoted here, and that's it, because, a year from now, no, everyone's gonna ask, and she's not gonna remember, or she'll struggle if it's a year later.
I will mention that to her. I do know she's in frequent contact with Joe Connolly. So he may have already coached her on that one.
Give her a heads up. Yeah.
I'll give her a heads up.
She's lovely, by the way.
She is lovely
Yeah.
and very enthusiastic. I think
Yeah.
she's gonna be good.
Other questions on the ring? All right, let's take a vote. All in favor of, rink budget at 679,456, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. All right, let's, do you have a motion for rec?
Yeah. We have a motion for that. I move approval of the, total recreation expenses of $2,907,975 with a total revenue of $2,907,975.
Is there a second?
Second.
Al?
Excuse me if you've mentioned this already. What's the purpose of the kid care preschool and after school? I mean, is it just so parents can drop them off while they go do other activities in this program? Or is it a freestanding preschool that competes with all the other preschools in the town?
Freestanding preschool that competes with all the other preschools in town. Same for the after school,
Why?
because there's demand.
And the revenue, okay,
I mean, they expanded and they are filling all the slots.
the revenues bring in are way disproportionate to the expenses. Unless somehow the salaries get factored into this.
Are you including the lines in the recreation expense of, kid care preschool and after school?
Okay,
You see those numbers?
yep. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chuck?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The assistant director position, is that relatively new?
No,
It's not.
no, they used to have one.
How long has it been? It's always been,
They used to have an assistant director.
She seemed to think it was a new position
I
this
thought it was a
year,
new
so
position.
maybe it was empty.
It's a revival of it.
It's a revival of the position.
Yep, they used to have it.
okay, thank you.
Michael?
Forecasting a big jump in revenue from the reservoir, 180 versus 150.
Yeah, I think that's because of additional stuff that's going on at the reservoir. So, you know,
It's also in line with the actuals for 24.
She was saying expanded hours, and then also they're getting a lot of interest in these sort of beer garden events and
Yeah, that's,
moving
so I was
dog
wondering what
events.
expanded hours meant, and it sounds like, you know, the swim hours are going to be the same or shrink versus other activity hours that pick up afterwards.
yeah, I don't think the swim hours were gonna shrink.
That was the effect last summer, that, you know, last whistle was getting earlier as there were other evening events. And by holding the line on not charging a differential for in-town or out-of-town swim fees, you know, there were a lot of people are getting whistled out of the water. And that's their choice.
Alan?
Did you get any numbers for the beer garden? What's that
Not specifically,
earned or?
no, I don't think there's a specific.
They were very busy.
Yes, they were very busy, but I don't think there's a revenue line.
We didn't get numbers, but she definitely made some reference to like, we gotta figure out how to get more of this money back to us. She was definitely alert to it.
Significant enough to be listed, to get its own revenue line.
Yeah.
Parking demands up and down the street.
Yeah,
It's definitely on their radar of something that was successful and that they wanna capitalize.
yeah, no, I don't see a separate line for it.
Maybe concessions.
I think probably some of that is concessions and some of it is, picnics and special events, but neither of those numbers look like they jumped enough for me to make it sound like they're getting a chunk of that money.
Paul?
Yes. On use of retained earnings, so there was none in 2023 or 2024, or was it somehow just didn't make it in the books?
No, there was no use of retained earnings in 2023 or 2024.
And do you have any idea on the actuals of 2025 so far?
I do not. I asked, but I don't think she ever got back to me about it, and she may not have a good idea yet, because, you know,
I assume that.
it's a cash flow filler, and they may not have pulled any money out of it yet.
That the 450,000 for 2025, they realized was it an overestimate and they lowered the number for 2026.
In my conversation with Joe last year, I got the impression that that $450,000 is mostly gonna be used for one-time projects, and that he was hoping it would come in low. And the 279 this year is also mostly for one-time projects. So they are not using it to fill income. They are using it as a reserve for these kinds of things.
Do you, the nature of those one-time projects? Do you know?
Well,
the parameter.
it's the parameter in both cases.
Topher?
I was just gonna say,
John?
The, debt principal,
Mhm.
just the jump from 50,000 to 65.
Yeah, that is a couple of field studies where they're, a couple of planning studies where they're splitting the cost with the town's capital budget.
So they're not really borrowing money, it's just like a time delay kind of thing.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Just
I
curious.
mean, if it's in the capital budget's either giving them cash or they're borrowing it. And
Through the
that,
capital
that would show up
budget.
in capital, for the capital budget half.
Got it.
But I think for their half, it may not be that it's debt, but it's investment in a capital project in these planning funds.
Got it. No, that makes sense. Thanks.
Carolyn?
Study is probably cash.
Yeah.
We found that.
You wouldn't capital.
Carolyn?
So there's no change in money because they put it in the budget. However, they've changed the director of recreation title to Director of Recreation and Community Programming.
Yes.
Because of all of the new programming. And within their budget, they were able to go from a management 1 to a management 2. And this shows that. So that's why there's no change in money. It's within the budget.
Cool. Other questions? Ellen?
Is the preschool salary, which is 0, and the after school, is that all merged into the 215,500? Or is that one salary figure cover both?
Where are we looking?
Well, I'm looking at the recreation, 512005, after school is $215,500 for salaries. And the kids' care preschool salary directly below is 0. I'm wondering if that 215,500 covers both.
No, I think it's the salary, it includes the salaries that are in the top line. The preschool salaries are in here,
Okay,
because if you look where they're listed.
and the
salary
after
detail,
school was broken out.
Yeah, after school is broken out, correct. If you look on the next page, there's a list of the preschool staff that goes into that top line.
It does seem like the kids' care after school is in there twice, and whereas the kids' care preschool is only in there once. Kids'
Well,
care-
there are some after school and preschool. And then after school and preschool. No, they're both in here twice.
But one's 0 at the top.
Yes. Is that true? In the 26th budget? Oh, yes. Got it. They must put all the food care into one line there. But some of this is, you know, all of those teacher positions and so on and so forth that are not salaried, that are 1099. So I didn't do any math on that, but I could do.
Other questions on the rec budget? All right, so we have a motion for 2907975. And seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. You have anything else, or has that exhausted all of your hard work?
That has exhausted all of my hard work, and I just want to say that I'm much more articulate when I'm writing and doing spreadsheets than I am when I talk, so I appreciate you all tolerating my ums.
So thank you, Annie and Rebecca. All right, on to the next budget. Carol.
Tara, if you can pull up the. Want to introduce everybody to. Police Department's newest officer, Officer Roger. Who is 6 foot tall, I think he's at the library. And you can go to the next one, Tara. He just graduated from puppy training school. And you can't see it, but there's a ribbon for his paws that he won the award for most improved puppy. So, of course, that's the question of what he would like day one, but I guess more important, what he'd like coming out. So he was donated by the Rotary Club. So Dave and Shirley, thank you. Who also funded his training. And Dave has the backstory on why he's named Roger.
The backstory is the officer that has the dog. They were gonna have they had a discussion in the police station, what to name the dog back. And he was home and his little girls, his young daughter said, "Daddy, why don't you call it Roger? That's all I hear you say on the radio, Roger." That's how the dog got its name.
So budgets aren't always just about numbers.
Can we get a hearing with?
No.
I think you're barking up the wrong tree.
That's really out of the water and sewer there, Grant. Okay, the police budget starts on page 118. On the salary side, there really isn't much going on, and we'll respond to some questions that we received from members. So I can go to that now. The manager did provide an update on the state of bargaining, but just to refresh the 22 through 24 contract for the ranking is there's been 4 years. This July there'll be 4 years without a contract. The current negotiation is in arbitration. They're waiting for the joint labor management committee to meet. Looks like the issues are, as always, mostly about money. Patrol contract this July will be 1 year without a contract, and negotiations have started. And then, of course, once we get through these, we get to start the whole thing again with the 25 through wherever they are. They had 6 patrol and 2 civilian vacancies. The 2 civilian vacancies they have filled, including the one that they're sharing where they did just, who is the Denise Bartz. The patrol vacancies, they had made 5 conditional officers. They've got 3 candidates going to the academy in March and 2 in June. So assuming that they passed their academy training, That will fill 5 of the 6 vacancies. The 6th vacancy is being held for an officer who overseas and is returning in August. So they should be in good shape unless somebody else goes out. We've got a question on the frequency and methods of patrolling the bikeways. The chief did say they do have resource constraints. In the warm weather, they patrol primarily at the request of the community. They do, there are a lot of crashes. I've had 2 over the years, so I can attest to that. There's some alcohol and drug use, some homeless issues. They generally try to patrol on bikes, and they've had to use overtime to fund it. They would like to get to increase their bikeway patrol, but haven't been able to. Got a question on why the fiscal 25 and 26 overtime requests are much lower than the 2023 and 2024 actual. They went back and looked back to about 2020, and the number they've asked for is the number they've consistently asked for. So beginning of the year, they don't necessarily know what their overtime obligations are going to be, right, driven primarily by vacancies and shift staffing requirements. But generally, if their overtime budget increases, it's because they're vacancies, so they're spending less on it. So it sort of all comes out in the wash. Similar question on why there's 55,000 on the expenses side, why there's 55,000 budgeted for small equipment when the expenses are well under 10,000. Again, they went back and looked, and they typically ask for 55,000. The uniform budget is much higher now than it was in 2023 and 2024. Beginning in fiscal 24, vests, bulletproof vests were shifted out of capital into operating. Then I did ask about the Comfort Dog program, which I just updated. One little additional anecdote is the school resources officer has been taking Roger around with him to schools, and apparently kids that would normally not come near the school officer can't keep away from the dog. So then the issue of the body worn cameras, this one has been out there now for years. It's still working its way through collective bargaining. It is in the patrol contract that's being negotiated now. They would get a 2% bump for wearing the cameras. They're just waiting on the negotiations with the ranking officers. The policy document is largely finalized. They'll share it with the Police Advisory Commission. And this is really the issue is, how to handle the image files that come out of it. They do have redaction software which they can use if necessary. When police come into a home, they have to notify if they're wearing a camera, and citizens can request the cameras be turned off in a private residence unless it's a domestic disturbance. And they found, I think more anecdotally, that people, both officers and citizens, behave better when the cameras are on. And they've also found that having the cameras, having the video, has really helped reduce the length of time of investigation of this conduct. So, right to the video.
It helps here too.
Does it really?
And they do have a contract with a company called Axon. They purchased the camera equipment a couple of years ago. I asked, well, what's the deal in terms of useful life? Their contract with Axon is that when Axon comes out with new models of cameras, they will be provided those. Got a question on if the police department has gotten any detainer requests from ICE, and Chief said once in 30 years for a very violent felon. They just updated their policy on federal immigration law. It's on the website. They're working with the legal department on their policy, but the headline of the policy is that they don't work with ICE. Not their role. The manager updated us on the status of police department with regards to civil service for hiring. Our home rule petition did get approved by the legislature along with Attleboro and Tewksbury. So they are now free to hire on their own. They're working with HR on how to actually implement that. They're looking to be able to access widen candidate pools, colleges, hospital security teams, and so on. And then they're also trying to figure out how to intake job applications. For example, Belmont puts applications on their front desk. Other towns use vendors that do the testing and then pass the successful candidates on. I did ask about if there was anything in the budget, not in the budget, that they would like, and she said they would like 2 additional full-time positions. One is dispatch supervisor, that I think we talked about last year. Currently, that's split position. The crime analyst is also the dispatch supervisor. And it's becoming more of an issue, one, because it takes away time that she can spend on crime analysis, and 2 is their sort of career dispatchers are retiring. They're getting much more of people just sort of passing through the position. I think the last career, did you say the last career dispatcher is supposed to retire this year?
This year, yeah.
So all the more great importance of having a dedicated full-time supervisor. And then the other position would be a deputy chief that's outside of collective bargaining. Update on the chief's retirement plans. She's got 2 years left in her contract. She had asked for.
It's not me.
No.
Ventriloquist or? She had asked for funding for internal training for internal candidates. She said, the manager and select board are perfectly free to hire from outside if they so choose. So she's doing the best she can for succession planning. And then the final question I asked her is, what public safety concerns keep her up at night? One is traffic pedestrian safety. The other one, which was both interesting and scary, is post office bandits. Apparently the mailboxes in front of the post office have been hit about 87 times. And the postal police won't do anything about it because the banks won't reimburse. And what they've found is that there's gangs out of Boston and New York that are hitting those mailboxes, and they have keys to the boxes, they have guns. And so they've made the probably sensible decision that they are not going to get into high-speed chases or firearm exchanges over, while not a victimless crime, is not sort of an immediately life-threatening crime. So I think the moral of the story is that unless it's something you really don't care about, don't put it in the mailbox on the street. And I think that is it on the questions. So move the question. I move that we approve the police budget for 26 of $9,719,100.
Second. Questions, Carolyn?
Well, I just noticed that you don't have a dispatch supervisor listed even as a part-time position.
It is no, it's not a part-time position, it's a full-time position with a person that's also functioning as the supervisor. It is, you go to the,
Last page, let's see, just the pictures.
there's a comm supervisor, Smith, that.
Oh, that's, okay, that's the dispatcher.
Anything else, Carolyn?
No.
Charlie, then Annie, then Rebecca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two quick questions. What was the interaction between the police department and the IT security, you know?
They've done the full training. She said that actually, she was very happy that, you know, the police officers did go through that whole training program. But I think like we're hearing elsewhere, there really isn't a
They're not
lot of
connected.
engagement between it. You know, the police department funds their various public safety applications, appears to be pretty separate from IT.
Is there any discussion about regionalization of the dispatch?
Dan, we did talk about that, didn't we?
I don't remember that coming up. I mean, they seem to have a, you know, a good amount of their own. Like I got the impression it was self-sufficient. They weren't looking to come up with anything.
An interesting idea.
Yeah. I will note that she's mentioned that supervised the dispatch.
Yeah. I could have to remember everything on it.
Yeah, it was discussed a number of years ago. It was an effort to get it underway. I don't know what happened.
Annie.
So I have a couple of questions. So on these 6 patrol vacancies, I'm really pleased to see the salaries going up here. Maybe I just haven't noticed the last couple of years. That looks like that. I'm gonna see if it's over what it was 5 years ago. And then, it looks like amongst those patrol vacancies, there's some retirements and some positions where the salary's not changing very much. Were those people who were still there early in their career being assessed? Do you know what the retention rate is? Maybe we not.
It didn't ask.
And then I noticed that Lieutenant Pedrini's position is vacant, and presumably we're filling that. Do you know what the plan to fill it? Are they gonna promote him in? Probably not.
I think I actually missed that. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll ask.
It's okay, it's not a big deal, doesn't affect the budget. Yeah, and then just to say that when I was on the select board, my understanding was the reason the police system got separated is because it was very
Could you
specific.
speak up a little bit, Ann?
The reason the police IT system is separated is because there's a very specific security issue with crime records and so on and so forth, particularly before prosecutions take place, so. They have to be separate, similar to that.
Rebecca, thank you. I had a question about the body worn cameras line for 89,000. Does that includes the storage?
That is the stuff.
That is the storage, okay. So hypothetically, if they couldn't come to an agreement on the cameras, then we wouldn't need to pay that entire amount?
There's no output from the camera, there's nothing to store.
But that's not like also, we've purchased the cameras.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And then my second question was, the dog is adorable, but the 10,000 additional for the dog, is that what sort of
Food
puppy
and
startup
vet
cost?
care.
Or is the new dog gonna be 10,000 a year every?
Assume it's gonna be 10,000 a year every year.
That seems surprising, given that the other dog is apparently only 24. It's not a big deal, but 10,000.
But you gotta pay for all that adorable
Stylist fees.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's
Movie
the
star quality.
training and the, puppies have vet expenses when they're young.
I like your
Thank you.
You haven't incurred vet bills recently, obviously.
10,000 a year seems a lot.
Yeah. Grant.
36 hours in the hospital.
Daryl, I'm gonna adhere to Daryl, Farmer rule, of course.
For
The
those who
social,
don't know, don't ask me a question that I don't know the answer.
and we adapted to the water sewer too for volunteers. But, the social worker, position, it's, I guess, 3/4, FTEs on page,
Yeah.
122. Is that a new position that they have? I can't remember. They had it
No,
last year.
it's the one they split with the share with the
AYC.
that Health and Human Services.
Oh, okay.
So they've got 3/4 of it, because that's the last quarter.
And that's how it was last. And it was vacant then, too.
No, and I don't understand why Health and Human Services had a name for it. Who is the person who's filled the vacancy? Whereas the police budget has a vacant spot.
There's a name on their website. Clinician, is that the same thing?
Yeah, this Denise Bart is the occupant of the position.
It's been filled, it just didn't make it.
Yeah,
this
I just don't know why it didn't make it to the police budget,
timing.
but unless she was already at HHS.
I guess that's sort of what I'm wondering, is it shared or is it?
It is shared.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Al,
But it was shared last year.
It's,
The position is shared. The person,
New incumbent.
Okay. It's a new person, so last year it was vacant, this year it's filled, but it just isn't updated.
on the
Just
police
one-
budget.
I think it was still last year, at least part of it. And
it's,
then the person left.
But it doesn't. Okay, I guess there's some sort of kinks in the coordination between the police budget and the HSS because someone doesn't say any of that, but okay.
Al,
Thank you. What's the overtime status for this year? Do they anticipate being able to, cover all their expenses this year?
They've always covered their expenses, at least in the federal budget. They haven't had to come back to us for. So as I said, if their overtime budget is increasing, it's because of vacancies, and so their salary budget has been decreased. So essentially washes.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions on the police budget? Grant?
Back to the social worker thing, I don't see that on Health and Human Services.
It's called homeless outreach.
Yeah,
Case management homeless outreach.
yeah.
Yeah.
Convert.
.25.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the.
On their website, they have a Christina Valerie, mental health clinician, is that the same person?
I think their website's not up to date.
Right. I don't think this lady is well.
And there was no, but. There is a person doing that position now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been, so, you're right, Grant, last year it was it.
I guess my confusion doesn't really matter. Let's just go ahead. I mean, it does seem confusing, but it doesn't affect the budget, I guess. It might affect the services that we get, but okay. All right. Just trying to track it seems like a blemish on a wall or something, but okay.
Other questions? Go for it.
So I know there is a ranking officer opening vacancy.
Sorry?
There's a ranking officer vacancy as well as patrol vacancies.
Yeah, that's what Annie asked about, that we just missed asking about.
Any other questions on the police budget? All right, there's a motion for $9,719,188 that's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you, Darryl. Other budgets. Topher, do you have assessors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tara, if you can put that up.
$53.
All right, so, excuse me, I'll do assessors. Tara, can you go to the next slide? So we had a meeting, it was Chuck and I, we met with Dana Mann, the director of assessments. Moving to the next slide. There's some basic data. The number of parcels has increased slightly, basically due to subdividing or condomization. The number of businesses is about the same. And then I just went through the one families, the condos, the two families and the three families. You may recall that the town manager said, as a lot of the new growth is condomization, 2 and 3 families. And he was thinking in the longer term, we might start running out of those. We may run out of 3 families. 2 families we have a lot of, but you can sort of see that trend just in those numbers. And then they're working on tracking ADUs. They don't have a great way to do that right now. Probably because some ADUs are in a building and some are not. But Dana said he is working on some way to do that. So with that, moving, and then the others are everything else. So moving to the budget itself, looking at the salaries, the steps he verified against it. There is a reclass. I don't know more than that. You did ask about the office manager, and I think we're running into this same phenomena that it's a title that's pretty generic, but the actual duties tend to have a lot of domain knowledge in whatever department they're in. And so he felt like this was an absolute critical position. This sort of tell he was thinking how up the creek he'd be if he didn't have this person. Going through the line items in the budget, cleaning allowance, it's the same as all the rest of them. Auto allowance, the town inspectors do have to go around, visit things. I'm going to break the consulting into sort of 2 pieces there. There's the existing piece, which is been there every year, and then they have another ask that I'll get to later in the presentation. The yearly stuff is for, if there's a appellate tax court, that there will be some appellate tax board appeals. That's for council. Possibly they would need a valuation expert or to do a survey. So, that's a fairly small piece of that consulting budget. The computer maintenance is Patriot software, it's both the internal CAMA system and the Web Pro that some of you probably go look at, look up assessments. The in-state travel is the same as it's been, which is the conferences and training for Dana and the data collector. And then the other unclassified, which is small, is just the time clock stamp and the copier cartridges. Surprisingly, they do a fair bit of copy. Yeah, that's a good put out. That's it. That is actually why they still have to punch it out. Getting on to abatements. There were, get down, one more tower. Keep going, I guess. One more slide. There we go. So there were 71 requested. That's pretty much flat. 74 were requested last year. Those will go to the Board of Assessors, and they make the judgment as to whether to do anything. They'll modify, he thought, about a dozen. Then of those, they may appeal. The rest of them, of the others, they may appeal to the appellate tax board. Again, that's usually commercial properties would do that. You have to have a large valuation and thus a large miss in what you think is a miss in your tax bill to justify hiring a lawyer and going through it. The way they do that valuation is they The town primarily uses the comparative sales. If it's a property that actually produces income, they'll look at the net operating income. One observation he made is just as valuations generally increase, the abatement risk will increase just because if it's a larger money. So they'll come up in the overlay. And another one was they've had a lot of excise tax abatement requests. He said that was a real spike, 984. And there's not, a lot of money compared to the property assessments, but that's a lot of work for somebody who partly, I guess that's part of why there's a reclass request. And of those, most of that though, someone sold a car in the middle of the year. And they just want to get their their portion that they're not using refunded. Very few people actually challenge the valuation that is put on their car. So moving on to the overlay account, this is something the Board of Assessors controls. It funds, obviously abatements, it funds exemptions, and an exemption is something like the person is blind. Appellate Tax Board does sometimes have rulings that can influence valuations. And then there's the risk of obviously unpaid collections. So all those elements go into the risk that there is. And so they have an overlay account to work against that. Right now that has 3.719 million in it as of the 27th of November of last year when Edith certified it. It was 3.136 million the year before, so we'll see. And then but against 1.314 million in potential future liabilities. So the Board of Assessors makes the decision on whether they release some of that. And in the next line, they have released 400, planning to release 400K in the overlay related surplus back to the revenue. And that's in the line D of the LRP. And then there's kind of this in-out because they then also will budget adding money to the overlay reserve every year. So it's a little circular. So those are the sort of standard yearly items. And then we get into the thing they're asking about, which is cyclical inspections. This is where the rest of that consulting money, the 58,000 that they want, comes from. So part of it is the Mass Bureau of Local Assessment wants that no property's data is more than 10 years old at any time. And the way they used to do that was do all the properties at once in year 9. Now they want to move to doing some inspections every year. The State Bureau of Local Assessment recommends that. He showed me some documents for that. David does think most towns are starting to do that. Potential benefits are that it will spread out the cost of inspections. You won't have this 300K that you do every year, year 9. It may capture new growth sooner. It depends a lot on, if they get a permit, someone pulls a permit, they know about it. And so they'll get that. But it's possible that either, the permit doesn't really cover the cost of everything and the value of everything, or that some people would do work without getting a permit. And he said oftentimes too, especially an attic or a basement, there may not be a ton of permittable work. Someone, puts up some drywall and throws in a couple outlets. So they may capture that. It's going to remain to be seen, I think, how much they'll get. But that's the rationale for moving to this. So then there's two elements to this. There's property is one and income and expense is another. So they actually jump-started this last year. They used 1,000. They wanted to do 1,500 inspections, but they did 1,000. They've calculated on this 10, if they were done before 2020, they have to be done by 2030. There's 11,000 inspections that have to be done that way. And the town employees will do the inspections that are triggered by a permit or a new sale or something like that. They look at all the new sales. He said maybe 100 a year trigger an inspection. And then obviously there's permits. So that's because I asked what are the town employees doing if you need these consultants, but the 58K is for the consultants to go in and do these other inspections and get the data entry done. It's not for any new software, but it is done by Patriot Properties. They won the bid. So this will be an ongoing expense. This will be every year. And there right now is a little bit, I guess, some debate over in assessor land about, should you get an internal hire rather than a contractor, if you have a subcontractor? But I guess that's under debate. Right now, though, it's a contractor and it's a consultant. And then the other half of this is the income and expense, and that was, we got 5,500 for basically what they want to do is they want to better value, or they want to have, some people more closely look at the income and expense data surrounding these properties. And basically getting both the data entry for it and consulting evaluations. They think if there's a better and more accurate valuation, it's likely to have fewer appellate tax board appeals, things like that. The other interesting thing when we drilled on this was they've instituted a fee, which the state allows for not responding to the request. So they ask these property owners, give us your income and expense. And a bunch of people just blow it off. They don't do it. And that has generated in last year 42,500, and so far this year 37,300. So it's pretty good money, pretty good return here. And he was saying he requested 7,500, so we're not only got 5,500, but this seems like it's definitely a fruitful route to take. And so that's really the change this year, what they were expecting, or requesting rather. And then we asked about technology improvements, and one that's nice around the excise taxes, they can now directly access the RMV database, which makes their work easier than having to call the RMV and hoping to get to somebody. I probably don't have to explain that any further. The Patriot Web Pro now is the full assessor record card for people who are interested in that. So it's everything they know. Right now, that is putting on the IT hat. That's on a server that we have. But Patriot wants to move this all to the cloud in the next version, which is a good idea. So then what else could happen in the future? There's the use of digital imaging technology to be able to look through maps and potentially could hook that up to reduce the need for inspections. This is obviously not happening right now, but this is something the Bureau of Local Assessment, right, has talked about in their certification documents that you might be able to do this, but they would cap it at 30%. So you can't completely automate this. I think this will remain to be seen exactly how it plays out, but there's potential here for using some sort of tech to help reduce the amount of shoe leather that has to go on this. And with that, I will move, and then we get the here. I will move the assessor's taxation total of $429,733.
Second.
Any questions?
Oh,
Alan, Carolyn, and Charlie.
sorry, mine, okay. I 58,000 to start the cyclical inspections I see, but, where's those 7,500 for
The request was 7,500. They got 5,500. It's in the 58,000. So I should have broken that
okay,
apart.
got it, thank you.
Carolyn?
Thanks. So for the reclass, it's just standalone, and it's going from an AO2 to an AO4, and they're only getting an increase of 233 plus the step and longevity that they're getting. I am gonna ask Karen tomorrow if we can, since they're going to an AO4, if we can change out the senior clerk typist to an office assistant, because there's another AO3 whose title is office assistant, and I know we're trying to get rid of that title.
Yes.
So I will bring that up tomorrow. It may just be that she didn't change it. This is a draft.
Charlie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Topher, this 58,000, that's all for the revale, right?
5,500 of it is for the income and expense. It's all for the revaluation, yes, it is all.
So, we used to handle that money in a warrant article. And my recollection is that, there's, typically they were running 250,000 to 300,000 on a 10-year basis.
Yeah, that's what he said. too.
And there was always money left over, 50, 75K, something like that, because it never quite got there. Do they have any money left in that warrant article account?
I did not ask, because I did not know that that account existed. I can follow
Yeah,
up on that.
the money flows over with the warrant article. Okay. Then the second thing that strikes me here is that, let me use the round number of 58,000. 9 times 58,000 is 522,000. That's sort of twice what we're used to spending on the revaluation.
Right, I don't know if it's,
Well, subtract the 7,500.
well, not just that, even if it's three.
Still, it's
only gonna take them 5
200.
years.
Yeah, I think it's only.
It's only gonna take them 5 years to do all
5
these.
years.
500,000.
So it's 5 times 58.
okay. So
It's not 10. It's
well,
actually 5.
okay, so it's
They're all
450,
10.
500,000.
It's probably 5.
It's 290,000.
Yeah, but it's probably 5 times like 53, because it's the 5,500 is the income and expense, and that's new.
Okay, so it's like 5 times.
5 times 58, oh, 53.
Okay, so that's back to the 250.
Right, exactly.
Okay, I thought it was gonna take 9 years. Thank you.
Other questions, Paul?
So how does this work going from the every 10-year to the rolling over setup? Isn't every place right now has been essentially 10 years since it's been inspected?
Not,
Vast majority.
well, I mean, no, because, well, the majority of them were probably done in 2019.
Ah.
Right, because they had this
Okay,
huge chunk.
It was 2019, okay, so this is, and then by the time
Yeah,
this
they're
is
figuring
done
catch
in
up.
5 years, we'll be there for 10 years.
Other questions on the assessor's budget grant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to, I guess, make a clarification point about the development stuff. It's not really budget related, but I know the town manager said, they're counting the 2-family properties that we get developed into. But it's not just the 2-family properties. It's any property with an R2 zone. So, I mean, if you take a walk around town, they can tear down a single family and put up
That's all.
a single family, put up the 2 typical townhouse condos and have 4 children move into each unit, and that increases the enrollment. So that's kind of like the missing piece, is that it isn't just a 2-family. Any property is game if it's in an R2 zone. So thank you for the opportunity to clarify that.
Other questions? Michael?
Patriot is now Catalyst, is that their?
I think that's right, yeah. I think it's still listed, yeah, I guess it's Web Pro. I'm not sure if they say policy, but I believe you're right, that they merged and bought it.
No problems foreseen with the new business administration on the vendor side?
They didn't mention it. No.
Anything else on the assessor's budget? All right, so we have a motion for 429,733, it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous, thank you. Do you have any other budgets?
I can do the treasurer.
Great.
Treasurer, we met with Julie Wayman. I think this week.
Yes.
And we just went through a few things.
45.
Sorry, it's page 45, yeah, sorry. The first thing we covered was just the review of controls, since this was part of the whole breach scenario. And just asking if the recommendations that were provided were put in place, and she said, yes, they are put in place. The comptroller is redoing some of the processes. They are updating a control framework that OSO, which is what auditors use, separation of duties. limiting system access, and a few other things to just increase the security. It's creating a little bit more work, but it's for the sake of better process controls. And then Invoice Cloud is our credit card processor, so we pay a bill, it goes to Invoice Cloud for the most part, there are some others. And there's another compliance thing for credit cards, and Invoice Cloud takes on that responsibility. And then Munis does have two-factor authentication, which is great. The only other comment I'll make on this is that the auditors were supposed to audit the processes within the comptroller and the treasury department. And they have been, so it kind of begs the question as why weren't some of these gaps seen before? Then in terms of cash management for the treasurer, it seems to be working okay. They are working on trying to reduce the cycle time between actually receiving cash and getting it to the treasurer. And for the most part, the credit cards do go to the treasurer, except there's one place in the schools that takes credit cards that she was not unclear about. It's something in the food service or cafe that may or may not be PCI compliant. We just don't know. But basically, all online financial transactions go into the treasurer's office accounts, which is good. In terms of accounts receivable and collections, things are still very, very healthy. We're at 99%. And in fact, our outstanding accounts receivable is decreasing from 2021 to 2024. I don't know if in large part, but at least in part, because of a new rule affecting the payment of taxes, where we can apply a 16% interest on the non-payment of taxes. It may be reduced, but right now it's 16%, which provides an extra incentive to pay your tax bill. Otherwise, you're stuck with a hefty bill. In terms of parking tickets, things are getting better. The revenue from parking tickets is going up. Somewhat. So 2023 was 230K. We're halfway through 2025, not even halfway. I guess we're halfway. We're at 162K in 2025. The reason for that is we're doing a better job of collecting late fees. And the reason we're doing a better job of collecting late fees is we've switched off of the Munis parking module, and we're using this service called from Kelly and Ryan, which also takes online credit cards. So that's the other one. But they act as a deputy collector, and they can append late fees to your RMV record. So when you go to renew whatever, your car or your license, I'm not sure, you have to pay the town your late fees for parking tickets. So we're getting some increase in revenue that way, and Kelly gets $2 a ticket. So anyway, that's there's a whole side note on Munis, which we won't get into. No concerns about cash flow or liquidity, just they're trying to just make accounts more accurate. We talked a little bit about CDBG funds and the impact of potentially losing that, given some of the what's happening, but that wasn't really, I don't think that's in scope for her, but she did have an opinion on it. In terms of banking services, we have primarily Eastern Bank. We've improved our fee structure with the banks. I think the way the fee structure works is we get an interest rate on the monies we put in it. There's not explicit fees. And Julie challenged the interest rate that we were getting, and the banks agreed to increase it, from asking. And so that's kind of helped us a little bit. And she does kind of move money from one bank to another, depending on interest rates, a little bit kind of arbitrage there. Debt management, probably everyone knows we're in very good shape on debt. Our AAA bond rating from S&P just came out recently. We issued a new offering recently for $12 million at a lower rate than it was a year ago. And we get 15 bidders. So those are all just great signs for us as a healthy town. In terms of investment management, the operational funds are in something pretty liquid, which is money market. But she is instituting the prudent investor rule, which was voted in town hall last year. And I didn't, I did vote on it, but I didn't understand it completely, so I'll confess, I understand it now, but I didn't understand it when I voted, so. But previously, we were restricted to 29 funds that the state said you could invest in these funds. And that was it, but now, because of this rule, we can expand that, to more funds. And she is in the process of working on an investment policy statement, and she hopes to have this new investment model in place by middle of the year. We did make some interest income off the HS building fund because we put a chunk of money in the bank and then that's interest. But that's kind of been tapering off because there's less and less money going in that account as the high school moves to completion. And then lastly, before I get into the line items, Munis is the core treasury management system. The access to it is coordinated and controlled by the comptroller in coordination with IT. There could be some additional enablement with online forms. I don't know if people have gone online and you fill out a PDF, you print it out, and then you got to bring a check. So there is a better way to do that. You go directly into a database. She could use some better technology to help with bank reconciliation. You'll see in the budget, we pay a consultant to help us with bank reconciliation, but there's a hard time matching up between, I'm out of school on this, but between what's Munis is showing and what the bank's showing in terms of timing of payments. And trying to get those two synced requires, I think, a fair amount of work. So we could use a better Munis consolidation of positions. I don't think we have a lot of leverage with peers, but it's kind of, it is what it is right now. And that's kind of like the preamble on the broad view. And then on the budget, the line item on page 46. 46. Advertising is the posting of positions and put properties into tax title when they have to go that route on a homeowner or commercial property. Other things of note, data processing is for American Alarm and a folding machine. Legal services, it fluctuates a little bit, and you see the fluctuation in 2024. That's because we had to put some extra effort into a non-taxpayer, and for 12 years, certain persons didn't pay taxes, and that required a little bit more legal muscle to make that happen. But her normal budget is what you see. Banking services, that's Invoice Cloud. It's also Courier for bank accounts. And it is all for the bank reconciliation consultants. Tax taking, that's the normal budget amount and fees associated with taking that action. Printing is the normal expense, but she is looking to outsource that at the same cost. And then computer print supplies is incremental. And just the photocopiers is a kind of an end of life. So on the staffing, the assistant collector backfills internally. Therefore, there's a vacancy in the print accountant cashier. And looking to fill that, we asked about potential consolidation, roles, function, or additional leverage. And she said there was none just because of the workload. And the treasurer assistant, she's looking to change that to office manager. Okay, good, you know that. And then there is a change in step for the excise collector. What was in the original spreadsheets we got was at a step 6. That is a mistake. It should have been a 7, but now it's an 8. Is my understanding.
Which one, sorry?
It's the
assistant collector for excise.
Susan, yeah. Excise collector.
Step should be an 8.
Should be an 8.
She says it's now an 8, and it results in a change of roughly $5,000 in compensation. So this number, this total number, this whole thing is off by about 5K. And she did give us some new sheets this morning.
Okay.
So we have those. So I don't know what we do about votes, but on that. And then, and that's it. So I don't know how to make it, if the amount's wrong,
So the salary line is different?
yes,
So do you have a new salary line number?
yeah, the new salary number is 730,356.
Are you sure that? No, that's,
That's the moment.
it's
total,
it's
isn't it?
six, it's 62698, I think.
We're looking at the salary, right?
Okay, so, well, I'm sorry, I'm learning, I think you'll see it. 594,716,
That's $5,000. That makes sense.
so that makes sense then, right? Yeah, 589 to 594, yep,
So what was the number 594, what?
594,716 is the revised number.
And what's the revised,
Oh. The treasurer collected taxation total is 779,419.
What is the, I'm missing this, what is the treasurer salary line?
On the budget page, not on the salary.
So the treasurer collected salaries.
On page 46 at the top, what is the total for the salary line?
Yeah, it's 730,356.
Why is the numbers?
Change.
That's a big change.
Yeah, that's like $25,000 change.
It was 724,917.
No,
You're doing the problem, yeah, this just.
Oh, 708,951. It was 703,512.
Yep, the new pay before offsets is 708,951. The new sheets are on SharePoint.
So what's the salary total again?
In the roll-up, in the roll-up, salaries are 708,951 plus overtime, plus longevity, plus cleaning, total 730,356.
And then the total taxation total?
779,419. And I'm reading the sheets on
Yeah,
SharePoint.
they're up in there.
Okay, so Chuck, are you making a motion of 779,419?
Yes, I make a motion to approve 779,419.
And is there a second?
Treasurer
All
collector.
right, questions on the treasurer's budget? Paul, Jordan,
Two questions. The offsets, is that affected by the change in the salary?
Do not know. I do not know that. Hopefully not.
No, they shouldn't.
And,
Said last year.
second question is, the legal services, when they have to go after someone to pay their taxes, do they get lawyers' fees as part of collecting?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that money goes into the general fund then presumably?
I think so.
Yeah.
Jordan,
Yeah, related to tax title, and I probably should have sent this to you in advance, but it just occurred to me. There's new regulations going into effect in the upcoming fiscal year for the processes that municipalities have to go through. And I'm just curious, was that, did the treasurer mention any of that?
She mentioned there was new legislation that might affect the 16%.
Yeah, there were a few, one, it's going from 16 to 8%, but it's more of a, it's a larger procedural, thing. Basically, when you would take a property, you used to be able to sell it and get the municipality could collect everything. Now, basically, you have to give anything beyond what was, owed to the municipality back to, the person whose property you took. So I was just curious if, they were ready for it, and if there were any, and part of the ruling that came down from the Supreme Court was that you could basically file a claim against a municipality going back to May 2021. So I was just curious if there were any potential issues with tax title, either for owing liabilities potentially, or if just making sure that we were ready for anything procedurally that may come. We also have to market and properties more proactively before you can actually take them. So again, sorry to kind of ask you out of the blue.
No, that's good. That's a good question. I'll ask.
Yeah, I'll send you an article too to put this into context.
You give me homework?
Carolyn?
So, there is a reclass for the treasurer's assistant to office manager, ATP 4 from an 085. There's no salary change listed at the moment, and my question for tomorrow will be why no money? It may simply be the person, Indri was ready for, the step change, and in the course of the step, they realized that their job was actually at a higher level. What they were doing was at a higher level. Since they're getting the step, it puts them into the range of the new level. So that may be why there's no increase in salary.
Okay,
I'll find out tomorrow.
thank you.
Alan Jones?
Going back to the potential expanded portfolio of the investments. I know you said she's preparing for that. Do you have any idea, would that involve an independent investment advisor or something going in the future?
I don't know.
I don't know if we expect that as a future expense.
I don't know. That's a good question. But she said all she said was she's developing a new investment policy.
And I think we sort of required that. Saying we want to see
I don't know
investment
if she
policy.
needs external.
I got a feeling she's not gonna do anything this year, but I'm just
She
wondering
says
if
she
she's.
wants to have it in place by mid-year.
Okay, well,
Not this fiscal year, but.
I guess my question is, who would be picking the investments?
We have an independent advisor.
From the treasurer?
Yeah, the treasurer doesn't pick any of the investments. The investment policy, which she's updating, is the guardrails that you give to the advisor, that they have to act within.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
I guess I
that's-
figured it was a lot simpler, it used to be a lot simpler, so maybe almost easy. But for such a restricted portfolio,
We do the legal list, yeah.
yeah, decisions would be really, with an expanded portfolio, I think it'd be a little more,
But that's why the policy is important, because that's the advisor has to stay within.
okay.
So even within the 29, she's getting advice, right? So now it's expanded, she's gonna get advice.
Okay. I just don't know if it'd be a
But I'll
cost.
ask, I'll ask.
It allows her to use her reasonable and prudent judgment to come up with her own.
Okay, Charlie has
Or I
questions?
guess, you know.
Christine, can I add to what was being said?
And she's a
Topher
treasurer,
at-
not investment.
All right, wait, one person at a time, Topher and then Charlie?
Yeah, so, was obviously investment, updated policy, getting it reviewed by a number of different people, including us. Trust fund, cemetery, library. Then there would be an RFP for a manager, which is the advisor that I think we're talking about. So I think is currently Rockland. And then, it built to that.
So there might be an increase in cost for an advisor with a bigger job. Maybe,
I guess,
maybe or maybe not.
I mean, we don't know, the RFP would go.
Thank you.
That's clarified. All right, thank you.
Charlie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Topher might have answered my question, but I thought from last year's town meeting that the town manager was gonna consult with the finance committee on the development of the policy.
And when he was here, he said that too. So I'm expecting that. And it wasn't just the finance committee or other players. So, and I was also expecting that this policy would be done as promised by the end of last year. I'm gonna look into that.
Thank you.
I've talked to the manager about it. Any other questions, Josh?
Thank you. Just a small question, in terms of actuals versus budget on the banking services. Is there any reason why it's double?
Her stored amount is $60,000. So she's just budgeting what she traditionally has, but she's only used 30K. That was the answer to that.
John?
Yeah, you mentioned the interest, shopping around, getting the better interest rate, that's great. I'm just curious, and this might be a question for like the group at large here, but, where does the interest go through the budget? Does that go through like free cash? I don't see a line in like, the property tax, so on and so forth, I don't see a line for like interest generated each year.
Yeah, I mean, I do not know.
What's the question again?
Where does the interest that's generated on
That's revenue.
our deposits, where does it go through the budget?
In general, just the general fund.
fund.
General
I think
fund.
Yeah,
So it would come through like free cash or something like that?
Free cash.
yeah, well,
half of it
it's,
goes to carry
we project a number for interest income, and then if it's over that, it just,
Yeah,
goes into the general fund.
so it's the free cash line, I guess. Is it the free cash?
Well, you're projecting $200,000 in interest income in Alan's general spreadsheet. It's, and if it comes in 50,000 over that, and then 50,000 goes to, free cash.
Got it. Okay.
Other questions on the treasury? All right, we have a motion for 779,419. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Any other budgets? Alan Jones.
I had postage.
If I could just answer that question, so free cash is money we take out of free cash, the interest income is in the spreadsheet, it's under local receipts. And it's budgeted as $65,000.
Thank you very much.
Okay, no, 65K was the.
Oh, sorry, that's fiscal 2016.
Yeah.
There's too many things.
All right, check, you have postage?
I have postage, yeah.
Let's do postage.
400,000.
Thanks for all the questions on this.
You say that this year, Chuck.
What's that?
You say that this year, when you have to answer the
So,
thing with it.
yeah. So postage,
Oh, yeah.
I guess I'll go to the expense line first. Changes here, the 20K, similar answer, this is what's always been budgeted, it's the money that goes to Pitney Bowes. I'm not sure if it was an accounting classification change, is why the bump, but that's what she said was a historically budgeted amount. The postage, the school has started taking on its own postage for some reason. Not sure why. So that's why the postage number has changed. Otherwise, that's about it on the expenses. And then on the staffing, this person's retired.
Oh, okay.
Does that change?
Yeah, they're not gonna replace it. We're not gonna replace it.
That's right.
I don't think they're gonna replace it.
And she doesn't, yeah, she's not looking to replace it. She's looking to use an external third party to perform the function.
There will be no salaries.
So there'll be no, for the postage, there'll be no salaries.
Wait, the third party costs something.
And the mail only goes out.
But it'll be an expense, right?
And that's not reflected in the budget yet.
No,
Yeah.
although I do have the new sheets, but. Oh, here we go, yeah.
Charlie?
When we were talking to the controller, she said they weren't gonna replace this person, but this person was used to deliver the mail internally, and pick the mail up internally within the town. And, I think they have to do it, each department has to do it on its own twice a week, right? Isn't that what she said? Yeah. So maybe the money goes away.
I think there's some stamping involved too.
No, but the personnel, no, the personnel charge goes with.
The personnel charge goes away, but there'll be an expense item added for functions. She said she was looking at Commonwealth printing as a potential to help with some of the other functions that might have been part of that meeting. Because she said she's doing part of it now, just stamping letters. Which isn't, ideal for treasurer.
Charlie?
Should we postpone this until she comes back with with a real budget?
We have
Tell us
another
what's
vote.
going on?
Yep, I'll ask for your sheets.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll pick this up on the next time we meet.
Just quick.
Since there's gonna be really no people in this budget, would they just maybe roll this into treasurer next year, so just, postage line item in treasurer?
That's a good idea. Is that allowed?
Yeah.
Can she do that? Is that her discretion?
Well, I'm for
Alex.
I have a conversation with her.
I think it's.
Grant?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that would also, technically, affect the offsets, because the water sewer offset is only applied against the HR portion of it.
No, there's no water sewer. Oh, there is water sewer.
So, they'll probably just roll that into, who knows, but technically, that's where it is, that's what would happen.
So the new sheet should reflect that.
Yeah, that's.
Should.
offsetting.
All right, so we'll postpone this. Dave, you had something on?
Just have a. So what I'm hearing is they're doing away with the mail department? That's the one
Is
person.
he a one-person mail department?
They have one person mail department.
0.6 person.
They've had for years, it's in the
Yeah.
basement of the town hall. That's that fellow, it's not there.
Retired.
Well, I'm telling you where the mail department is, it's in the basement of the town hall. So,
Like a reason to.
there's outgoing mail and incoming mail, who's gonna go to the post office to pick up the incoming mail? That's my
Alright.
question. You're
Well, we'll
doing
get
away
some
with
information
with the
on
mail
this
department.
budget.
Outsourcing.
All right, so we have 7 minutes left. I don't know if we have enough time. Do you think we have enough time to do the warrant?
Well, no. I just wanted to, you should have the warrant. Now, when I reviewed it, I was the last one she needed to hear from. So it will be numbered like over the next couple of days. When we get the numbered one, we'll send it out to you, but it should be in the same order. But of course, the selectmen could always change their mind before the final thing. There's 25 selectmen articles, 20 zoning, 29 FinCom, and 4 resolutions. So 78 articles altogether. Zoning alone will take at least 4 weeks. It's just, you could read through yourself, but it's just a lot of articles. So go through and we'll at some point in the future, we'll decide which ones we want to hear. There's about 2 or 3 articles in the FinCom that we'll need to hear, one of which you've already done. And there's a lot of things that'd be interesting to hear, but it's not finance, so you'll have to go to the selectmen's meetings to do some of it, but it should be in your inbox.
All right, so we will, so. Dean? So, everyone, be quiet, I wanna finish. Grant. So be prepared to, help decide what we want to hear on the warrant. Couple of scheduling things, Annie, you said ACA would be ready on March 3rd. So we, the Permanent Town Building Committee is coming in on the 26th of February. ACA is the 3rd of March. Minuteman is the 10th of March. Capital Planning is the 12th of March. And hopefully the schools will finish us off on the 24th. I think, so tonight was productive. We have, I think we're pretty much where we were at this point last year. So I'm inclined not to meet at all next week. But we have to hit the ground running when we come back on the 24th, so I'm hoping we'll have loads of budgets. Then who knows, they'll have a budget ready on the 24th. Carol, any class?
Yeah, reclass and HR budget.
Okay. Charlie, do you,
We should have the comptroller and return.
anybody else? Everyone else, try to get those budgets finalized and get them in. Because now, once we hit March, we're gonna have the warrant articles and the committees. We have to still schedule the CPA. So we're not gonna have a whole lot of time to do budgets once we hit March. So I like to try to do budgets, as much as we can. All right, I will see everyone on the 24th.